Hey, what's going on, everybody? Back with another how-to. Today we're going to be doing the front passenger CV axle on this 2009 Nissan Pathfinder. Now this should fall in line with any third-gen Pathfinder, which is 2005 to 2012, so let's get into it now. Alright guys, here on the passenger side, of course, we're going to go ahead and get this wheel off. Now the lug nuts are a 21 mil, so I just have a 21 mil here on an impact. So let's go ahead and fire all 6 of these lug nuts right off. Alright, so the wheel is off, and I'll bring you guys in to show you why we're doing this. And there we go. She's split and she's spewing grease everywhere, so definitely time. So there we go, guys. That is why this job is getting done. She's busted, broken, boots bad. So all right guys, so first thing we're going to do is get this cotter pin out and get this axle nut off. So this thing is pretty thick, might be relatively tight. Well, it's got some needle noses on it. I should be able to just pull it through once I get it straightened out, as I just did, and should be able to get her out. Should be close. Another pair of pliers here. I'm going to use this to finish it off a little stronger and thicker, and there we go, guys. Cotter pin out. So now we can go ahead and get this axle nut off. All right, next move here. We've got the cotter pin out. We're going to go ahead and get the axle nut off. So the axle nut is a 32 mil. Okay, so I got a 32 mil here. You're going to want to use an impact for this, because without an impact, not going to be fun. I would suggest buying one or borrowing one if you don't have one, but impact is a tool of choice. So 32 mil. And that's why you want to impact, because it fires right out. So we got that off, guys. On to the next step. All right, so we got that nut off there on the axle. So now we do need playroom here in order to get this axle out and sneak it out and put the new one in, of course. Okay, so we're going to have to disconnect the knuckle here at this upper ball joint. Okay, so we got the upper ball joint here basically on this upper control arm. So what we're going to do is go ahead and get this cotter pin out of here, crack this nut loose, separate the ball joint from the control arm, and that should give us the play to pull this back, and then we have room to, you know, allow that axle to break free and come out. So let's go ahead and separate this ball joint. So just as we had to do on the axle, we have a cotter pin here. This one is pretty hard to see because it's all greased up and corroded up here, but there's a cotter pin on this, of course. So we're just going to straighten this thing out, and then I should be able to pull it through from the other side. This is the side that needs to be straightened. The circled end is on the inner part, of course, so it's going to be a little fun project to get to here, but see if I can get in here on it. Oh, I think I got it now. Yeah, geez. Wow. There it is, guys. That thing really fought me. I don't know what the deal was on that thing, but it's out, so I'll just put a new one in when we get to that. All right, so this upper ball joint is a 22 mil, but before we get to that, I want to hit that with a impact. So in order for me to sneak my impact in, I got to remove this wheel speed sensor bracket here. So it is also a good idea to remove this now as well, because once we separate this, we're going to be pulling it back. It's going to be putting a pretty hard strain on this wire if it's still connected to the knuckle. So the best case is just to get it off out of our way. It's only held in with one bolt, which is right there. This is a 12 mil, so I'm just going to put a 12 mil on a socket wrench. We're going to back that bracket off, and then we're going to get this harness and wire out of our way, and that way we don't got to worry about it. It's not going to be in our way. We're not going to break it, and then it's out of sight, out of mind, not a concern for us with this job. Okay, so you can see she's freed up, and there we go. Thing is all but out of our way. All right, so I'll probably just tuck it right here for right now. We might have to move it a little bit once we get to that removal of the axle, but I'm going to take the bolt here, just put it right back where it came from, so that way we don't lose it. So I'm just putting the first few threads right back in. So I just got it started. There we go. All right, so I got that started, and now we should be able to squeeze that impact in here and fire that 22 mil off of that upper control arm. All right, guys, so See if my calculations were correct. I don't know. I might still not be able to get in here with the impact. I thought I could sneak in here with it, but yeah, there we go. It was a little off of here, but we got in there. That was a goal. I just didn't want to fight with that with the socket wrench. We're trying to work quicker and smarter, not harder. So that's why we're using power tools, because they make everything easier. So now what we need to do is separate that ball joint, you know, from the control arm. So I want to go ahead and grab the tool and we'll get this thing off. All right, so here is our setup to remove the ball joint here. So what we're using is like a separator tool, okay? Now, you want to be careful where you put this because it could potentially compromise or rip the boot. On this one, it's already ripped. We got grease everywhere, and that's why this is so dirty. So this boot on this one is already compromised, but I'm obviously not going to try to further compromise it. You just want to put this in there, you know, as best as you can without, you know, scraping and ripping the bushing. Just try to sneak it in there slightly and get it underneath of it so you don't tear at it when you're doing this, okay? So now one thing I do want to say is this has a you know, you can put a socket over this, or it also has a 3/8 drive on the upper head. So that's what we're going to be using. I just got a 3/8 drive socket wrench, and you're just going to be tightening it to do that. All right, so we can see all the grease that thing had. Yeah, that boot is boot's rather busted, guys. So I have to suggest that to him as well to get an upper control arm. But yeah, guys, that's where we're at. I'm gonna pull this harness out of the way. I do believe we should have enough playroom now to get this axle out, I think. Let's see if it'll let us pull on it or get it out here. All right, she's not really moving too much with finger and hand power, so. All right, guys, so this thing's fighting me here trying to get out with my hands, so I'm just taking a pry bar, putting it right here, and then just working it right out. That thing should be all but out. Yep, it's coming out. This wire's a little bit in my way, but super tight. Let me see if I can get this to maneuver enough to get out. There we go. There we go, guys. Super tight fit here, but it came out. So now all we got to do is the fun part, and that's get this axle separated from the inner spline. So let's get this thing out. All right, so we are under the truck now, and you can see this is where the axle is going in to the transfer case. Okay, so we need to separate this from right here. It's, you know, basically like it's got a pin on the end of the splines, and it almost like locks it in once it gets pressed in. So in my opinion, getting CV axles in and out is never fun, but you know, once you do a few of them or do them the right way, it makes it a little bit more manageable, and it's not the end of the world and the hardest thing. So what I'm going to use to do this job is I actually have an CV axle separator tool. You get this from Amazon. I'll actually, you know, leave the part number and everything for this tool as well. So what we're going to do is get that under there just like that, because you want it to come out evenly. Okay, you could do this with a huge flathead too, a couple flatheads on each side, you know, big pry bars. I've done it, you can do it, but this tool, if you can get it into the space where the axle is, it's much easier than messing with flatheads or pry bars. So you can see it's on there pretty good. It's slid right behind it. So let's go ahead and get this thing popped out. All right, guys, let's try this out here. See if I can just do it by hand. Yep, perfect. That's why you buy these tools, guys. It makes life so much easier. The right tools change everything. Look at that, came right out. Now we're losing a bit of fluid, which is to be expected sometimes when you remove axles and stuff. So I'm going to let that sit in there until we put the new one back in. I'm going to slide the new one right in, so you know, we don't have to worry about losing a bunch of fluid and all that, and I don't have to go into this transfer case and top it off or anything like that. So there we go, guys. Literally hand strength, pop that thing right out. So let's go review the new axle and then we'll get that thing in. All right guys, so here is our new axle. Now in my opinion, most aftermarket axles suck, but that's just my opinion. So it really doesn't matter where you get it from. I would recommend getting it from a local parts store, because that way if there's any issues with it, you can easily swap it, versus getting something like this from Rock Auto. If you got to return it, you got to go through all their motions and, you know, pay shipping and all that other stuff. So not really fun to deal with. I would just say get it from a local parts store. That's what this customer did. It's a CarQuest Rate from Advance. That is the part number NCV 53127. Okay, so that is our new axle. Let's go ahead and get this thing installed. All right guys, and this is the locking pin, key, whatever you want to refer to it as, and that's what locks it into the transmission. If it was a four-wheel drive car, or, you know, a transfer case, whatever the case may be, this is how they're all set up, and that's what we need to get snapped back in, and that's how we popped it out. So just so you can see what you're trying to pop out, it's that ring right there. Here's the new axle. And like I said, I kept the old one in just to help that fluid stay in there. So what I want to do is pull that old one out, and we're going to pop that new one right back in to lose basically the minimalist amount of fluid possible. All right, so let me go ahead and get set up, and then we'll get this new axle in. All right guys, so you're looking at the transfer case. So I have the new one here. It's right on my lap, so I'm gonna quickly pull this one out. It's a little bit tight in here. Actually, I think I'm gonna have to feed it through this way. Oh no. Alright guys, we're not really losing any fluid, but I got this thing stuck here. I cannot get it out. Alright guys, I'm over here struggling harder than I should have been trying to take this thing out. So I think I figured it out. All you gotta do is remove the bump stop. It is held in with a 12 mil right in that hole. Okay, so 12 mil, that's what it is. Just gotta fire that thing right out. And now, if you get this thing on the right angle, you should be able to slide it right out. Alright, so there we go guys, axle is out. Just had to disconnect the ball joint from the upper control arm, remove the bump stop, obviously remove it from the wheel hub on the knuckle, and there we go guys, old axle out. Let's get the new one in. All right guys, now that we got that thing out, it is new axle time. So we're just gonna do the same thing we did to get it out, and that's sneak it in right here. All right, just gonna take a little maneuvering, and I got some stress on that brake hose, so let me put the camera here, see if I can do this while recording. This is not fun, but let's see what we can do. All right, I want to shoot that down so I can then get this aimed over here. All right, get this to come up a hair. This is definitely a pain in the ass, I'm not gonna lie, but you know, you gotta do what you gotta do. All right, so let me see if we get the splines in here to start catching. All right guys, I think I got the splines aligned in there. I'm just going to double check. I mean, you get the idea. You're sliding it in the way he took it out, and you put it back in. So what I want to do is make sure that we're in as far as we can, and then I'll show you how to get this thing to lock in on that key ring that we were discussing, on that locking ring that holds it into the transfer case. All right guys, so I do have the splines aligned in the transfer case. Everything is good. Now, in my opinion, one of the hardest things about doing a CV axle is getting that ring back in, especially if you can't get a direct shot on it. It needs force to go in, especially if this is the first axle you've done. It might be a little tricky. The key to this is getting it straight. Okay, so you want to have it as straight as possible. Hold it here, and you want to give it some light wax to tap it in to get that ring to push back into the transfer case or transmission, or obviously whatever you're doing. So I'm just going to take a rubber mallet. This is a 4-pound rubber mallet. I think I already felt its seat, so I gave it a couple blows there. As you saw, we come in here, you can see it is in. Okay, so let me get the light. You can see it's back in the transfer case, and the way I did it was simply having it straight as possible, even with the even blow. You're going to have some tension on this brake hose. I mean, I know this looks bad, but it's not as bad as it looks. You're going to have to almost have it in that position to get a straight hit on it, but that's really the key to success, guys, is you need this straight as possible. Take a rubber mallet, give it a few whacks right on the edge, as light and precise as possible, and it should force that key right back into the transfer case. So there we go, guys. This axle is installed. Now we're just going to go ahead and do the reverse of removal, of course, and get this all put back together. All right, guys, so we're going to go ahead and get this thing reassembled. So I'm going to go ahead and drop this bump stop back in here. So just drop right back into place. All right, so it's good to go right there. All right, so now that's it. I'm going to go ahead and spin the axle nut, the new axle nut off of this, so we can get some of that tension off of that brake hose. Like I said, you can put some tension on that brake hose. Just don't let it be crazy amount. I mean, I had it pretty tight, but it was all right. Like I said, I know it looked horrific, but it's not that bad. All right, so got that off. Could probably go ahead and get this axle guided back in to the knuckle. Yep, all but there. I'll have to mess with it to get the splines to align, but let's see here. All right, so I got that pushed through. So you saw what I did. I just really let it fall into the hole and I'm just pushing it back up. All right, now that that's where it's at, I'm gonna go ahead and put the axle nut on there to hold that in place. I'm not gonna fully thread it, just spin it on and get some threads started. And now we're just gonna go ahead and get this knuckle back into the control arm. All right, so now that we got this, loosely together, I'm just gonna go ahead and get our bump stop that we took off finished off. So 12 mil, I'm just going to start the 12 mil. We're going to get that tight. If you'd like, you could torque it to spec. Here is a torque spec. It's 14 foot-pounds. I'm just going to lightly lock it in with the impact. So I'm going to go ahead and get it finger tight going up through the hole, and then we're going to get that thing locked in. All right, guys, I got that thing finger tight. I'm just going to snug it in with the impact. This should be good. Nice and locked in. All right, so like I said, that's 14 foot-pounds if you want to torque it, but I just snugged it in with the impact. All right, so we got that back together. Let's continue with the reassembly. All right, so bump stop back in. We're gonna go ahead and get that upper ball joint to the control arm back in. So got the 22 mil nut here. We're just gonna go ahead and finger thread this bad boy back on. Get it started here. All right, and what I want to do is snug this in with the impact. And after I do that, we're going to go ahead and torque it to spec. All right, so I just got this 22 mil here on that ball joint locked in with the impact. It was spinning on me, so what I had to do is pull the knuckle, arm here towards me, and I just got it with the impact, and it was, pretty much snug. I'm going to go ahead and hit it with the torque wrench though, just to make sure it's locked in. Now the torque spec for this 22 mil ball joint nut, it is 58 foot-pounds. So I have the torque wrench locked in 58 foot-pounds. I actually got a spin, but I think it's just going to be spinning the actual entire assembly, but I got it locked in with the impact, so I think we're good on that. But torque spec is 58 foot-pounds, so we're just going to go ahead and cotter pin that thing up, and we should be good on that ball joint nut. All right, so we're going to go ahead and cotter pin that ball joint. As if you remember from the beginning of the video when we disassembled it, I chewed up the original one, so that is a new cotter pin on there. Slid it right through. We're just going to bend it down here by bending around it a little bit. There we go. It's perfect, guys. That's all we need. Cotter pinned, good to go. Should have no issues as far as this cotter pin's concerned. That's all locked in, and we're good to go on that ball joint. So the next thing here, of course, is just getting this axle nut locked back on. You could use the original nut. I typically like using the original nut, but this one is going on pretty smoothly, so we'll just go ahead and use it. Now the original was a 32 mil. This aftermarket one is actually a 35. All right, so the torque spec for this is 101 foot-pounds. So you can see from the blowout here, the axle nut, front axle nut, that is 101 foot-pounds. I'm just gonna snug it on with the impact though, just to make this easy. Definitely get away with doing this. Yep, and that's perfect, guys. So just got it on my tight setting on my impact that locked it right in. And I'm gonna go ahead and use a new cotter pin on this as well, because why not? I got them, might as well use them. So this push through, I'll go ahead and bend this thing around the shaft here with some snips, and just gonna have to press it down, guys. Here we'll probably get a little hammer and press it down just to not strip it up, but there we go, guys. That is good to go. Alright, so we got that cotter pin bent up really good so to avoid any wheel obstruction, so that is good to go. And then really the last thing we have here is our sensor bracket here. So that's the wheel speed sensor bracket. If you remember, we did put the 12 mil right behind the knuckle. So all I'm going to do is get that lined back up, this little tab back into the groove, and then we'll get this 12 mil started, and then we'll go ahead and lock this 12 mil in. Alright guys, I got that finger tight now. There's actually no torque spec for this 12 mil here for this bracket, so I'm just going to get it snug with our 12 mil on a 3/8 drive ratchet. Just want to go until it's, you know, tight, not moving anymore. So there we go, that's locked in nice and tight, and now we fully have this reassembled. We have our axle bolt locked in, control arm and ball joint all cotter pin locked in, everything's torqued to spec, axle in. So I hope this helped with doing the front passenger axle on your 3rd gen Nissan Pathfinder. Make sure you stay tuned because you never know when I might be wrenching on this thing again. And until next time, guys.